to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is about a major event that happened in Europe this weekend. And no, I'm not talking about the referendum in Ukraine. I'm actually talking, if you haven't noticed, there was a general election in Italy. And the far-right wing party, the Brothers of Italy, have won the election together with their coalition partners, Matteo Salvini's far-right League, and Silvio Berlusconi, center-right Forza Italy. And it seems to me that the new prime minister is going to be the Giorgia Meloni, who will probably be appointed in late October as a prime minister and then be able to form a government. Now, just some background facts. Giorgia Meloni is going to be the first female prime minister in the history of Italy. And she has been accused of a fascist due to her party have a long time ago had some relationship or connection to Mussolini. But if you listen to her speeches and what she says, she's actually a nationalist. Now, I just want to clear up the story about what is fascism. It seems to me I had the definition wrong last time. So I Googled it, and according to two renowned dictionaries, the one is a Merriam-Webster dictionary. Fascism is a political philosophy, movement, or regime such that the fascist that exists nation and often rise about the individual that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of any opposition. And then we have the definition of the Britannica dictionary, which calls fascism is a way of organizing a society in which a government ruled by a dictator controls the lives of the people and in which people are not allowed to disagree with the government. So, I'm sorry, Giorgia Meloni shows no sign of that. So I don't know why there are still YouTube videos being made or in the news declaring as a fascist. She's definitely not, even if you look at what the statement she does. And so forth. So let's continue. The way that I see it, she's another woman in a Eurozone that has a very prominent leadership position. She's anti-Eurozone, she's anti-Putin, she's pro-Ukraine, and she states she's for the people, and she's against refugees or asylum seekers. And like she said in a recent speech, well, she said, no, she really actually screamed it. She said, to paraphrase her, yes to the natural family, no to the LGBT lobby, yes to sexual identity, no to gender ideology, no to Islamist violence, yes to secure borders, no to mass migration, no to big international finance, and no to the bureaucrats of Brussels. If you want to call that fascism, then I really don't know, then you should contact the Britannica Encyclopedia and the Webster Dictionary. In any case, a partner, well, partners actually, but in this case, one of a partner, Matteo Salvini, is from the right-wing party and was in power for a certain short period, but unfortunately it didn't achieve much. And then the other partner is Silvio Berlusconi, who's from the center-right. And if you have followed Italian politics a little bit, then you will know that he's a very controversial person with some scandals. And he was actually disposed of in a very informal coup d'etat. But that's in the past. He's also one of the richest people in Italy and the head of a media company. And he has also the most political experience. Both of these men are pro-Putin, or at least has some neutral attitudes towards him. And I would consider them more pragmatic. Well, we have seen that men are mostly more pragmatic, not all of them, but it's usually the women that are more fanatical and aggressive. Now, if you stand a little bit back and you look at what Italy has done, or who Italy is, rather is, it's one of the founding members of the Eurozone, one of the three. It has the second largest industrial base in Europe. It has a debt of 152.6% of GDP, which is higher than in 2019, when it was 13.8%. And it claimed in these last 3-4 years, while Draghi, who was the president of the ECB, was in charge and supposed to get the financial situation in Italy under control. Before Draghi was actually the prime minister, he was preceded by Giuseppe Conte, who was in charge from 2018 till 2021. Now, if you look at certain economic articles or financial articles, you will find that most of them consider the Italian banks as zombie banks because of their over-indebtedness. And if there would ever have been a crash in the Eurozone, then these experts would have believed that it would either have started in Italy or in Spain. And if you have also watched the news, then you would have found that most of the refugees or the migration, Italy wore the brunt of that and did not receive a lot of support from the EU itself. Now, the world has changed basically in February of this year. Before that period, we had the West as a very strong economic bloc, political bloc, and had the most influence over the world affairs because of their financial power and their consumerism, the petrodollar, and other factors that I've mentioned in previous videos. So, but when Russia basically started its SMO in Ukraine, it started in parallel the establishment of a multipolar world, an alternative to the West, which was supposed to be a unipolar. And basically, it's not the same anymore. Now, Italy has a lot of problems, which is inherently to Italy. And then it has other problems being part of the EU. And the main concern at this stage is the energy crisis that is happening in Europe, which is self-inflicted, and the high interest rate. And those are basically the issues that have started being part of the EU. Now, if Giorgia Meloni is anti-Euro EU, then that will probably be one of her focus, because the EU is causing all the problems. Now, Italy is not Greece, although they are trying to make some connections between Greece and the power of the EU. The EU zone is not in unity anymore, yes, in spite of what they are saying. But if you look at the announcements or the speeches that are given by the Polish government, and even the Hungary, who doesn't want to basically join the sanction badness of the EU, you cannot say that the EU is not also in a crisis in a political sense. Then we have the energy crisis, which I've just mentioned, and especially Germany, who's usually the bully and who forced Greece into an austerity program. And when that happened, Merkel was at the helm of Germany. Well, Merkel is not there anymore. Then because Russia and China as establishing a multipolar world. There's basically an alternative economic bloc in the East. And therefore, Georgina has basically options. Now, I've already stated, due to the wokeness of the Western world, women have been placed into high leaders positions, and the same happened actually in politics. And we have female leaders in Estonia who are very aggressive. Then we have Finland, who likes the party very much, and then we have a woman at the head of Sweden. And Finland and Sweden's leaders didn't consult their population whether they wanted to join NATO or not. So that shows you already how the women leaders are thinking. And then you have Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission. And then you shouldn't forget the statements that are made by the German Foreign Minister Baerbock. In any case, if you look at how they talk about and how they react and what they say, then you will find that most of these female leaders are very radical, and they are very aggressive, and they're also mostly emotional, which is how women mostly think of. And I'm not trying to be sexist or so, but we are different. Men and women do react differently. Unless you have a very cold psychopath woman, then, well, men are also psychopath and can basically agree that they are the same, but not in general. And then we have Marine Le Pen of the French National Party, and then you have Alice Weidel of the AfD in Germany. Both of them are fairly right-wing. Well, they are called right-wing, but they are not actually that right-wing. They are more moderate, but because the left has moved so much to the left of the spectrum, the right-wings are now actually in a moderate section. So, in any case, so what will Giorgia Meloni actually be able to do? Well, that is what we have to see and find out. I'm not totally clued up on Italy's politics, so I haven't followed her that much. So she's a fairly newcomer. So I have to see how she reacts. Maybe we can discuss it in future videos. But the biggest question is, we know how aggressive and authoritarian the EU leadership is. And one has to wonder whether she will be able to withstand the pressure that will come from Brussels. I would even refer to a recent statement made by Ursula von der Leyen about the Italian election. And I'll quote, "We'll see. If things go in a difficult direction, and I've spoken about Hungary and Poland, we have the tools." Which effectively means that Italy doesn't behave according to what she says or what the leadership in Brussels decide, then they will implement certain tools. And we know what type of tools the EU can use. Mostly is financial. If you look at Greece, they were basically cut off from their banks and their ATM stops. And you can also listen to the Polish president, who actually criticized Ursula's statement. Because when the Polish wanted to exercise their sovereignty by establishing a certain couple of laws, which are, according to Ursula, in violation of the EU principles, they withhold some funds to Poland. And also because Hungary is not supporting the sanctions and actually buying sensibly his energy from Russia, they came up with this, oh, Hungary is so corrupt, so we cannot send our money to Hungary because it will just be stolen by corrupt people. That is just packaging the tools into a different paper or put a lid on it. So let's see what will happen. But I know we always try to go, ooh, yeah, Greece will be an example. Now, when Greece had their problems, and when the Syriza party was involved, it was all good and well in Europe, and it was all good and well in America. And basically, the world was totally different. It was still, the West still had a major control and influence on the rest of the countries and even on their partner, so they could force them into certain blocks. And I always thought at that stage, when the Greece problem arose, that the Syriza party had never had any chance to really win. You cannot threaten if you don't have an alternative option. And Greece didn't have any alternative option. The party just didn't prepare for that. So you can also not negotiate if you are in a fairly strong position. And although financially Greece had big problems, they should have looked for an alternative, which was actually, if I remember correctly, it was offered by Russia, but the Greek leaders didn't want to take advantage of that. So they went with a weak foot or a weak case into the negotiations, and Merkel and the cohorts just told them, that's it. This is what you're going to do, and you have no other choice. And then Greece folded, and we know all the austerity and all the other problems that started. But today, like I said, the world has changed. It's not the same anymore. If you look at it, the Eurozone is in deep trouble. Britain has exited the Eurozone, and the euro is falling. Germany is on the brink of collapsing due to the energy problems that are being created. There's a huge energy crisis or shortage of things, which has a huge impact on the economic situation. Germany, who's the most dependent and actually the most vulnerable, wants the other countries to share the energy, which are already signs are being given that the other countries are not going to share their energy, the gas. So what you see is there's an underlying type of rebellion happening in multiple countries. So the unipolar world is collapsing. The influence of Europe and America is waning. The Eastern countries with Russia are establishing an alternative, which provides an option to Georgia. So it is not the weak position that Greece was in. She has some options which she can always use as leverage. Yes, I know she is not a supporter of Russia or Putin, but the partners are. And the partners are also a lot more practical and realistic, or realists. Yes, okay. She doesn't have the necessary political experience, how to deal with the EU. But the other two guys have. And if she has stated that she will support the people, and the party is for the people, and she will not basically abandon the population, then she has to do something in order to alleviate the energy crisis, and with that, the inflation. So she has to listen to her partners, and maybe they will convince her to go to join the Eastern Bloc and abandon. If not, then she at least has a good negotiation position when she talks to Ursula. Now, at this stage, I don't know why people want to join the EU. It should be clear that from the initial objective, the EU was supposed to be an economic bloc and an economic trading group, and there were a lot of benefits for that. And I can understand why most people want to join it. But unfortunately, then the euro was established, which started already create problems. And in the last couple of years, and I'm not talking 2 or 3 years, I'm talking like maybe 10 years, the EU has sort of developed into a political union, which nobody really expects. And it has become a very authoritarian organization, where people or countries have lost their sovereignty and their own decision-making process. And that was actually why the biggest reason why Britain left the EU, to regain that sovereignty. So if Britain wants to leave, why does anybody really want to join it? Why does anybody still want to be part of the EU? So for Giorgia to remain in the EU might not be that important, especially since she is against the EU. In any case, if you also look at the western part of the EU and the eastern part, which is like Romania and Poland and Estonia and Hungary and so on, they are much more realistic. Oh, sorry. Yes, they are realistic, but they are more aggressive, but I'm not talking about that part. They are a lot vocaler. They are not that woke. They haven't been brainwashed as the West has to do the right thing. And they are standing up for their right. And they are complaining. So the European Union is not a homogeneous organization. So do I believe that the euros will survive? I doubt it. With Poland being so vocal and the refusal of Hungary to succumb to the pressure of Brussels, also doubt it again. With the energy and the subsequent economic woes, I don't believe the euro will be able to survive. So one then has to ask if this Giorgia Meloni is going to be the catalyst. To be honest, I hope so. I'm not a big supporter of the EU, especially since what it was supposed to be and what it has become. And so let's see what actually will happen in the near future. Yeah, October is a month away. It will take a month to be appointed and set up a government. But time is running out. And to say the legendary word, winter is coming. But think about this, what effect that will be. That's my story for the day. If you like what you heard, please press the like button. And don't like, press the don't like button. And if you want to hear more, then subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening. And cheers.